Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something really key for anyone making tracks, audio mixing.
Absolutely. It's fundamental.
And we're using a great guide, a video from the Sound Test Room on YouTube. It's all about the mixer on the Native Instruments Maschine mk3, and adding effects.
That's a good one. Yeah, they break it down nicely.
Now, mixing, it can sometimes feel a bit, basic, compared to sound design or whatever.
Yeah, less glamorous maybe.
Yeah.
But honestly, your mix, it's probably the most crucial part of your whole track.
Totally agree. Get it right. Everything just sounds better. Get it wrong.
And even the best beat can sound, well, muddy or just weak. This video, it really helps beginners get a handle on that machine mixer, how to put effects on, say, just the snare or just the kick.
Exactly. So that's our mission today. We're going to pull out the key stuff from this tutorial for you listening right now. We want to make these core mixing ideas on the mk3 make sense, wherever you're at.
Yeah, whether you're just starting or need a refresher.
The video uses a simple setup. Drums in group 1, bass in group 2, some chords in group C, and a lead. And the point is they were just recorded straight in, no level adjustments yet.
Right, totally raw.
So you can hear the before. Let's imagine hearing that. Now it's okay, but not quite there yet, right?
Definitely. You hear the parts, but they're kind of fighting each other for space. It highlights why mixing is so needed.
Okay, so let's jump in. First thing, how do you even get to the mixer on the mk3?
It's right there on the hardware. Below that button labeled plugin instance, there's one just called mixer.
Simple enough. You tap that.
Yep, one tap. And you're seeing the mixer for whatever group is currently selected. So if group A, the drums in their example, is lit up, you see the drum mixer.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. It follows what you're working on.
It's pretty intuitive, yeah. The hardware matches the software really well there. And it usually defaults to showing the controls for the specific sound you last played within that group.
Right. But say you want to tweak just the hi-hat within that drum group, not the whole kit.
Good question. So the tutorial shows you use that main rotary encoder, the big knob.
Okay.
And you'll see little LEDs next to it light up. If one lights up on the left or right, it means you can turn that knob to scroll through the 16 pads, basically the 16 sounds in your group.
And the pad lights up too, so you know which one you're on, like the hi-hat pad.
Exactly. Pad 3, or whichever it is, will light up. So you always have that visual feedback. It's really handy for selecting individual sounds.
That's cool. So you can really get specific, adjusting just that one sound.
That's the idea. You're not just stuck with one volume fader for all the drums. You can fine-tune the kick, the snare, the hat, everything individually.
Okay, so you've tweaked the hi-hat. Now you want to zoom back out, see the whole drum group again. How do you do that?
You just move up a level. If you're looking at the hi-hat's mixer channel, you hit the up arrow button or just navigate the selection up one step.
And that takes you to
the group mixing level. So now you see the main controls for the entire drum group. Volume for the whole kit, panning for the whole kit. And you can add effects here that affect all the drums together.
Got it. So there are layers, individual sound, then the whole group.
Precisely. And the tutorial points out, if you go up one more level from the group mix.
Oh, that must be the master track for everything.
That's it. The master mix level for the whole project. So you've got this tiered structure, sound, group, and master. Gives you loads of control.
Which brings us nicely to levels.
Yeah.
And this thing called headroom. The video really hammers this home. Don't go over 0 dB on the meters.
Yeah, that's like mixing 101, but so important. Going into the red, hitting 0 dB or above, that's digital clipping.
Which sounds bad, right? Like distortion.
Generally, yeah. It's a harsh, nasty kind of distortion. It just flattens everything out, kills your dynamic range, the difference between the loud and quiet bits. Clipping just squashes it all.
So headroom is the space below that 0 dB point.
Exactly. It's your safety zone. The tutorial says, look, if one sound feels too quiet, don't just crank it up until it clips. Try turning other things down first to make space for it.
That makes sense. Like making room at the table instead of shouting louder.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
And they recommend aiming for maybe -10 dB of headroom on your final mix export.
-10. Why so low?
It gives the mastering engineer, or you if you're mastering it yourself, room to work. They need that space to bring the overall level up, maybe add some final compression or EQ, without instantly hitting the ceiling and clipping. It's about leaving potential for that final polish.
Okay, headroom. Got it. Don't clip. Leave space. So how do we actually start adjusting things? The tutorial uses the drums as the main example.
Right, so they show you can adjust the whole drum group's volume easily at that group level we talked about.
But then they get into the individual sounds, like that hi-hat again.
And they show a really useful trick. Hold shift and tap solo on that hi-hat pad.
Ah, so you only hear the hi-hat, everything else cuts out.
Yep. Isolates it completely. Super useful when you're trying to figure out exactly what EQ tweak it needs, or if there's a weird noise or something, without hearing the kick and snare banging away.
Makes sense. So, hi-hat soloed, then effects.
Then you hit that plug-in instance button again. That takes you to the effects chain just for that specific sound, just for the hi-hat in this case.
And the video makes it clear you can add effects on the sound, the group, or the master, right?
Absolutely. 3 different places to insert plugins. For the hi-hat example, they add a maximizer first.
A maximizer, what's that do exactly?
It's basically a tool to increase the perceived loudness, make it feel louder and punchier, often without raising the actual peak level too much. They say it gives the hi-hat a little bit of a kick, a bit of a boost.
Okay, makes it stand out more. And you see a little plus sign light up when it's active.
Yeah, the visual cue again.
Then they add an EQ.
Equalizer for tone shaping.
Right. EQ lets you boost or cut specific frequencies. In the video, they boost the high frequencies on the hi-hat.
To make it sound crisper, more sizzle. Exactly. It's a common trick for hi-hats, helps them cut through the mix. But then, and this is key, they unsolo the hi-hat.
Ah, to hear it back with everything else.
You have to. A sound might be amazing on its own, but totally wrong in the context of the full track.
Yeah.
Mixing is all about how the parts fit together.
Good point. And they do similar stuff for the kick, EQ and maximizer.
Yeah, the tutorial mentions applying similar ideas to the kick just to give it more definition and punch. Again, it's often about subtle changes.
And the snare. Anything different there?
For the snare, they show adding some reverb, to give it a sense of space, plus another maximizer for impact.
So individual tweaks first, then what? They move to the groups?
Yeah, then they start looking at the group level again, bringing in the bass guitar. They mentioned the bass might also need some EQ to find its own space. Stop it clashing with the kick drum, maybe?
And you add effects to the bass group the same way. Select the group, hit plug-in instance.
Exactly. Any effect you add there affects the whole bass sound.
Okay. They also had that interesting side note about playing bass and guitar in the same scale for a human feel.
Yeah, just a little creative production tip thrown in there. A reminder that it's not all just technical fader pushing, it's about the music too.
True. And then the chords, that organ sound.
They bring that in too, again, adjusting its level at the group level, just trying to get that basic balance right between the drums, bass, and chords, building the foundation.
Right, getting the core elements sitting nicely together.
Before you get too lost in the details, yeah.
Okay, next level up, the master mix. And the lead sound comes in here.
Well, they adjust the lead sound itself first at its own sound level, but yeah, thinking about how it fits in the overall master mix, the tutorial points out the lead needs to be louder, more upfront.
So how do they do that? Another maximizer.
Yep, they add a maximizer to the lead sound itself to boost its received level, and also a delay effect.
Like an echo.
Yeah, to give it some space and maybe some rhythmic interest. They even show tweaking the delay's feedback knob.
Feedback that controls how many echoes you get.
Pretty much, yeah. How long the echoes sustain. You can get just 1 or 2 repeats, or a whole wash of sound depending on how you set it. Adds character.
Cool. Anything else on the lead?
They also add an EQ to the lead sound. Again, boosting the high frequencies, the top end.
Same reason as the hi-hat, to help it cut through.
Basically, yeah. To make it clearer and more present against the other instruments. But this leads to a really crucial point they make about EQ.
Which is?
When you boost frequencies with an EQ, you're not just changing the tone, you're also effectively turning up the volume of that sound.
Oh, right, because you're adding energy in those frequency ranges.
Exactly. So if you boost the highs on the lead to make it cut through, you might then need to pull back the lead's overall volume fader slightly in the main mix.
To compensate and make sure you don't start clipping because of that EQ boost?
Precisely. It's easy to forget that EQ boosts add level. That's why the tutorial also briefly mentions the idea of cutting frequencies instead of boosting.
Cutting, like removing frequencies.
Yeah. They say it can be a bit more complex, maybe less intuitive at first, but it's often seen as a better practice. You're taking away problem frequencies rather than adding more energy.
So carving out space instead of just making things louder.
Kind of, yeah. But boosting is fine, especially when you're learning. The main thing is if you do boost, do it gently and then check your overall level for that sound afterwards. Keep an eye on that headroom.
Got it. Boost carefully, adjust level after. Makes sense.
Then they loop back quickly to the drums.
The whole kit this time, at the group level.
Yeah, they show adding a maximizer to the entire drum group channel, just to give the whole kit a little lift. Glue it together, maybe?
And they stress starting low with that effect.
Absolutely. Start subtle, maybe increase it a tiny bit if needed. It shows you can layer effects. Individual drum hits might have their own processing, and then the whole group gets a touch more.
Okay, levels, effects, EQ.
Yeah.
What about stereo placement? Panning.
Yeah, panning, making things sound left or right. Super important for creating width and separation. The tutorial covers how to access that too.
How does that work on the mk3?
Okay, so you select the group you want to pan, like the drums again. Then you hold down that unlabeled button, the one they call Unco.
The mystery button.
Huh, yeah. While holding that, you can adjust group volume. But then if you press the big 4D encoder knob,
Click it down.
yeah, click it, it switches into pan mode for that group. The LEDs around the encoder change to show you your controlling pan now, left to right.
Oh, neat. Visual feedback again?
Very handy.
Yeah.
And once you're in that group pan mode, you can actually use the main arrow buttons, the left-right ones, to pan the whole group.
So you could shift the whole drum kit slightly left or right if you wanted.
Exactly. But usually you want more detailed panning, right?
Like putting the hi-hat on one side and maybe a cymbal on the other?
Precisely. So you select the group, click down into it to select an individual sound, like the hi-hat pad,
Okay.
and then you press that encoder knob again. Now you're controlling the pan just for that individual hi-hat sound.
Ah, okay. So select group, click encoder for group pan, select sound within group, click encoder again for sound pan.
You got it. That individual panning is where you really start building your stereo image, placing each element carefully in the sound field. Kick usually center, snare maybe slightly off, hats and percussion spread out a bit. It creates clarity.
Makes a big difference to the overall feel, I bet.
Huge difference. Stops everything feeling like it's just piled up in the middle.
So wrapping up, what were the final takeaways from the tutorial video?
Well, mostly encouragement, really. They basically say, just get in there and experiment with the mixer and the effects.
Don't be scared of it.
Right. And they acknowledge, look, their example track was simple, just 4 groups. Real projects often have way more tracks, way more sounds.
So the mixing process gets more complex.
Naturally. But the principles are the same. They call the Maschine mixer beautiful, which is nice, and just stress how important applying effects and adjustments to individual sounds is for making your track really pop.
Yeah, that experimentation point is key, isn't it? Mixing isn't always by the book.
Not at all. It's technical, sure, but it's also creative. You develop your ear by trying things, listening, seeing what works for your music. There are guidelines, but rarely hard and fast rules you can never break.
Okay, so let's sum up the big points from this deep dive. Based on that sound test room video, we saw the mixer structure, sound, group, master.
Eat up those layers of control.
We talked about headroom, super important, staying below 0 dB, aiming for maybe negative 10 dB on export.
Avoiding that digital clipping at all costs.
We looked at adjusting individual sounds with volume, EQ for tone, effects like maximizers for punch, reverb for space.
Using solo to focus in and always checking back in context.
And doing similar things at the group level, plus the basics of panning, both for groups and individual sounds, using that encoder.
Giving you that stereo width, it's a really solid foundation they provide. The essential tools you need to start mixing properly in Maschine.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, the next step is really yours. We seriously suggest you open up Maschine, grab a simple project, maybe just a beat you've made.
Yeah, don't pick your magnum opus for the first try, something simple.
And just navigate. Click the mixer button, select sounds, try soloing things, add an EQ, just twist the knobs and listen to what happens.
Add a delay. Try panning that clap all the way to the left. Hear the difference it makes. Don't worry about getting it perfect right away.
Just experiment. What happens if I boost the bass here? What if I cut the mids on the snare? How does this reverb sound?
The more you play around and actively listen to the changes, the more it starts to click. It becomes intuitive over time.
Definitely. So here's a final thought to leave you with. As you get more comfortable with mixing, with balancing levels, using EQ, creating space with panning and reverb, how might that deeper understanding of the mixer start to influence your earlier creative choices?
Ooh, interesting. Like when you're first picking sounds or programming a beat.
Exactly. Knowing how you'll likely need to treat sounds in the mix, change how you design or choose them in the first place. Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought. Thinking about the mix right from the start.
Okay, that's our time for this deep dive. Until next time.